Hello and welcome to Mind to Soul. This is our third episode. Yay! This is the podcast where thought meets transformation. I'm so glad you are tuning in today. Welcome back. I want to start with a question. Have you ever noticed that no matter what happens around you, you often return to the same emotion? Think about it. Maybe things are going fine. Nothing major has gone wrong, yet you still feel anxious. Or maybe you feel yourself irritated and on edge. Some of you may feel a low hum of sadness in the background, even when life looks good all around you. And a few people will just feel calmness and positivity come naturally to them, like it's just part of who they are. Here's the truth. Each of us has a default emotional setting. It is the emotion we are predisposed to, the one we slip into the most, sometimes even without noticing. And today, we will be going to uncover what that means, why it happens, and most importantly, how to recognize it in yourself. Because when you know your default emotion, you gain power, the power to walk with it rather than let it control you. So grab a note or settle in for the next 20 minutes. We will explore the science behind predisposed emotion, how to spot your own predisposed emotion or emotional default, the one common to most people, and how to begin to shift patterns that no longer serve you. Welcome back. So let's dive into it. I always like to start with a story time. So here is one. When I first had my first child, I thought I was blessed with the best experience ever. This child slept through the night, never cried. The only time this child will cry is when they wanted to eat or when they needed a diaper change. They didn't need to be carried. They were always just a jolly baby, very friendly, rarely had stranger danger, just an interesting, calm personality. And then I had the second child. This child wanted to be carried more, wouldn't sleep through the night, didn't like strangers, was more introverted. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Same parent, two different personality, two different emotional predisposition. And that's because they've inherited personality genes from both myself and my spouse, grandfather, which I see in one of them, grandma's personality, which I also see in one of them. So that's the science behind our predisposed emotion. Let's talk about it. So why are we predisposed to certain emotion? Why does one person lean towards worry and another towards anger and another towards joy? Psychologists and neuroscientists have studied this for decades, and what they found is fascinating. There are three main focuses at play here. There is biology, there is environment, and there is repetition. Let's explore all three of us. Biology, which really is explaining the genetics of emotional predisposition. It's your emotional blueprint. We can't ignore the role of genetics. The temperament you're born with has a huge influence on your emotional tendency. The amygdala, which is part of your brain that scans for threat, is more active in some people than others. If your amygdala is especially sensitive, you may find fear or anxiety shows up quicker than most, even in situations that doesn't warrant worrying. On the other side, some people have more active dopamine system, which makes them more predisposed to experiencing excitement, motivation, joy, calmness. They may wake up ready to embrace the day, while someone else wakes up already anticipating stress. A lot of research have shown that 30 to 50% of our emotional predisposition is genetically linked, meaning grandma, grandpa, uncle, auntie, dad, mom, has actually gifted us this emotional predisposition. Usually when I get a history in an initial consult, I ask all those questions. Has grandma suffered from anxiety? Does dad have anxiety? Is there a brother that has anxiety? Is there a sister that has depression or has suffered with any mental health diseases in the past? And that's because there is a strong genetic correlation between you having a mental health diagnosis or you struggling with anxiety or depression and a family member having it as well. So also with diagnoses like schizophrenia, bipolar, a lot of the time there are other family members that have suffered for it because that genetic link is in the family trait. A lot of the time, I will even notice that those genetic predispositions affect latent years when we're more predisposed to midlife crisis or stressors. So in our early years, if they don't show up, sometimes they tend to show up later in the year when stress is at the maximum. Now let's talk about the second factor, which is environment. The emotional climate you grow up in also affects your emotional predisposition. Biology is just part of the picture. The environment you grow up in leaves a lasting imprint. Imagine two households. The first household, the atmosphere is tense, unpredictable, argumentative. The parents are always arguing daily, and the children never know the mood their caregiver will be in. A child in this environment may grow up wired to be easily anxious or hypervigilant, always scanning the room for signs of danger. In the second household, emotions are expressed freely. They're validated, they're soothed. The children learn that big feelings are manageable and safe. This child is more likely to grow up into an adult predisposed towards calmness and resilience. Your environment doesn't just shape your emotional response, it literally trains your nervous system to prefer certain states over another. The last one is repetition. This third factor explains that when you have certain emotions show up all the time, the brain remembers this as normal. Every time you experience an emotion, your brain strengthens the neural pathways connected to it. The more often that emotion happens, whether it's anger, whether it's joy, whether it's calmness, whether it's sadness, the more stronger that neural pathway is, the more easier it is to fall back to that the next time you feel like you may perceive something as stressful. If sadness is the visitor in your early life, your brain becomes efficient at producing sadness. If anger was common in your household, you may find it comes easier to you than others. So when we talk about the predisposed emotion, we're really talking about this common, familiar, frequent, deep emotional habit that feels automatic because your brain and your body are used to returning to them. Understanding the why is important, but the real power is understanding our own patterns. So let's dive into it. How do you identify your own emotional default? Here are 4 tools I want us to try to kind of understand and be aware of our own emotional default. The morning scan. I like the morning scan. When you wake up, before you reach out for your phone or you start your day, pause and ask, what am I feeling right now? Do you notice any sense of worry or quiet heaviness or the readiness to go start the day? The morning often reveals your emotional baseline because you haven't been influenced by the outside world yet. So try in the next few days to do a morning scan of emotion. Get an audit of what emotion you're starting the day with. I do that in the morning. I wake up, I stay still for 5 minutes. It gives me enough time to kind of know what I'm feeling before I get up, put on a podcast, and start my day. The stress test is the next tool I want us to try in the next few days. Pay attention to how you react under pressure. Let's say your boss emailed you an urgent request, or you have a child that melts down easily, or you're stuck in traffic and there's a probability you're going to be late. What is your first response? Do you lash out in anger? Do you feel anxious? Or do you start to catastrophize? Or do you shut down and withdraw? That knee-jerk reaction is a powerful cue to what your emotional default is. I always say, when I'm in bumper-to-bumper traffic, that's when the real emotional default shows up. Or when someone cuts you off, and I know a lot of us can relate. You start to get a cue of, oh, this is what I tend to move into quicker. The third tool is the weekly emotional tracking. For 1 week, track your emotion. At the end of each day, jot down the strongest emotion you felt that day. After 7 days, let's look back and see which one shows up the most. The one that shows up the most is a reliable way to spot the patterns you may otherwise not be aware of. So that's the weekly emotional tracking. The fourth tool I want us to try is outside feedback. I love this a lot. I always say when I'm in session, I'm here to allow you see your blind spot because we naturally don't see our own blind spot. That's why we're going to look for a person or people we can trust and we can be vulnerable with. And we're going to allow them the opportunity to help us see our blind spot. Ask someone close to you, when I'm stressed or upset, what emotion do you notice in me the most? Sometimes our friends and partners see us more clear than we see ourselves. Their perceptions can shine light on the pattern we are blinded to. If you're listening right now, I want you to pause just for a few seconds and check in. What emotion do you feel most often in your daily life? Not the one you want to feel, not the one you feel is ideal, but the one that actually shows up the most. Is it anxiety? Is it irritation? Is it sadness? Is it calmness? Is it optimism? Is it frustration? The first answer that comes to mind, I want you to hold on to. It may be pointing us towards your emotional default. Here are the most common predisposed emotions that most people find is part of their normal and daily automatic life. Based on research, these common emotions are often at the forefront. It is automatic to us, and sometimes we're not even sure why. And so that's why we're working on it. Let's talk about those emotions. The first one is anxiety and fear. If anxiety is your default, you may live with a constant hum of what if. This person will do a lot of what if, what if, what if. Even in calm moment, your mind jumps to what could go wrong. Example will be your friend cancels their dinner plans with you. Instead of shrugging it off and thinking, oh, maybe something came up, you're fast and immediate to think they are upset at me. They must be mad. They don't like me anymore. That's why they canceled. This person is more predisposed to catastrophic thinking and anxiety. Let's talk about anger and irritability. Those two kind of come hand in hand. I say most times if you're not seeing anger, which is that outburst, you're seeing irritability, which is underlining. That's that irritation, that's just annoyance that just follows you throughout the day. If anger is your default, you may feel like you're always on the edge. Small annoyances escalate quickly. An example would be someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of letting it go, your entire body fills with rage. I always do the traffic test, which is whenever I'm cut off in traffic, I immediately start to think, there might be something going on with that person. they may need to be getting somewhere quicker than I need to. And that changes what emotion I feel in that moment. Sadness, melancholy. If sadness is your predisposed emotion, you may often dwell on what's missing, even when nothing is lost. An example will be this person gets a promotion at work, but instead of celebrating it, they're thinking about the people that are not there to share it with them. They're thinking about the last promotion they were supposed to get. They're thinking about just sad things that doesn't complement that wonderful thing that is happening to them. Shame and self-criticism. If shame is your default, your quiet voice is, I'm not good enough. It shows up more often than it should in your daily life. An example is you make a small mistake, and instead of thinking, oh, things happen, mistakes happen, you start to spiral into, I'm a failure, I'm just never good enough, I'm never going to get this, I'm never going to be successful. If calm and contentment is your default emotion, you are more predisposed to be calm and optimistic. You see the cup half full versus the cup half empty. You are able to navigate and problem solve. You move into problem solving much easier, and even acceptance. An example is your car breaks down. Instead of panicking, your first thought is, how do we figure this out? Let's talk about how we can work on predisposed emotion. In the next few weeks, or whenever you get to listening to this podcast, I'm encouraging you to do this 4 things for me. Name without judgment. Name the emotion you're feeling without judgment, without judging yourself, without feeling any kind of other emotion, but just naming it. It looks like I feel anxious right now. In this moment, anxiety is showing up. Balance it out with the opposite. When you can name that emotion, label that emotion, I want you to move into balancing it out with an opposite emotion. So if it's anxiety, you want to start affirming yourself into strength. If it's sadness, I want you to start affirming yourself into joy. Do things that will make you feel joy. Listen to a music. Remember good memories. If it's anger, I want you to practice compassion. Shift the story. Like I said before, when I'm caught off in traffic, I automatically move into shifting the story. I challenge the inner narrative tied to my predisposed emotion. I try to say, yeah, that person must have an emergency going on. It has nothing to do with me, so I don't need to feel nothing but contentment right now. And it really works. I want us to try it because scientifically, based on the research, you are now reprogramming that pathway that often shows up with that default unhealthy, unhelpful emotion. Build flexibility. That's the last thing I'm asking you to do. Expand your range of emotion so you're not trapped into one state all the time. Here's your reflection for the week. Each evening, write down the most dominant emotion you feel that day. At the end of the week, look for the patterns. Which emotion repeats the most? Once you identify it, write down the opposite emotion you would like to invite and choose one small practice to nurture it. Our predisposed emotions are not flaws. They are patterns, and patterns that can be shifted with awareness, compassion, and practice. Thanks for being here with me today on Mind to Soul. If this conversation resonates, share with someone you love who may be curious about their own emotional defaults. Until next time, stay mindful, stay curious, and remember, every thought, every feeling can be a doorway to transformation. Also remember, awareness is power, and power is freedom. Thank you, and be kind to yourself.